What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of the Dads Who Mosh podcast. My name is Nate. It's a pleasure to be joining you once again from sunny Arizona. Welcome. If this is your first time checking us out, thank you for checking us out. We're glad you're here. This is just a space. You don't have to be a dad, but you could just be a dude. You could be not a dad or a dude. You could be, something else. But this is the place where we talk about music, particularly music within the heavy realm, hardcore, metalcore, punk, all that stuff. But we talk about all kinds of music here. And then we talk about what it's like to be a dad, what it's like to be a dude. In today's society, we, try to encourage those guys who are out there trying to do the best that they can and just be a space where you feel encouraged. I've had some cool feedback just from a couple of guys. I think the listening base is starting to grow a little bit and getting to a point where we're getting some feedback from people, which is really cool. Even just like quick messages that are just like, hey, this was great. I really appreciate this, or I really feel this. Or one guy was like, I literally was just having this exact same conversation with my brother, and we were trying to figure out why it seems so tough nowadays and stuff like that. And, in the last episode, I talked a bit about, how I mentioned how it feels like the previous generation, like our dads, the responsibility was basically like, hey, you go get a job, you work 9 to 5, then you come home, and that's about it. If you do that, you've kind of checked the box for your family. And the point I was making is that now it seems like there's so many more boxes that guys have to check. And, there's a number of factors as to why that is, because it's super expensive to live in the United States of America. It could be because, it's hard to get jobs that pay well, or whatever it is. Or you could have a great job, but that job requires you to be gone from home oftentimes. And so there's a lot of different boxes that we have to check as guys. But I do want to clarify, I guess I don't want to, because I was listening to that later on, I don't want to come across as like, oh, our dads just had it easy, right? Like the generation before us, those dads just had it easy. It's hard for a dad no matter what generation they're a part of. I think like we would look at like my dad, I had a great dad. And it's like, it's kind of one of these things now. I feel like it's kind of popular, like in certain psychological sectors and, certain ideas of psychology, where it's like, well, let's go back into your past and unpack all of the ways that your parents failed you. And then we'll realize like why you're sad today or something like that. And I do appreciate the fact that like sometimes we do need to go back into our past and, recognize certain patterns maybe that we grew up in, or recognize like, maybe some trauma that we have, or things that, maybe we didn't deal with when we were young. Or maybe like we do have like, maybe there are people out there that really had terrible parents and had a terrible example of what it means to be a dad. And now you're a dad and you're like, I don't even know how to do that. My dad wasn't around, or my dad was abusive, or whatever it is. But I think for a lot of people, like in my situation, I had a great dad. And sure, yeah, it would be really easy to like make a list of things that's like, well, yeah, I had a great dad, but I didn't like this, or I didn't like when he did this, or I remember when he said this or did this. And just like my own sons will be able to at some point in my life, my hope is that they'll be like, yeah, he was a good dad. And I'm sure they could sit down and be like, but he did this, and then he messed up here, and I remember this, and I'll never forget when he said this to me. It's like we're always setting ourselves up for failure a little bit as parents, because like there's always the chance that we're gonna mess something up. But what I mean in all of this is that there's I don't want to make it seem like I think like my dad's generation failed by any means, because it's like I can look back at like my dad and his dad, and there's certain things I know about his dad where I know that my dad did things better. Like there were certain downfalls that his dad had, or certain things that were wrong that his dad may have done that my dad chose not to do. There's like certain patterns that my dad chose to put an end to. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I know my dad did this, but I'm not going to do that. And my dad, has always been really great at taking the best parts of like my grandpa, his dad, and trying to emulate those things, and then just like not doing the bad parts. And so I don't want anybody to listen to this and make me, or misunderstand me, if I wasn't communicating clearly enough, and think that like, I think that like our dads like were a failure because a lot of them were not. A lot of them were dads who mosh. Dads that mosh, dads who mosh. Yeah. Anyways, so I just wanted to clear that up a little bit. Still recovering a little bit from the Boundary show that I was at. By the time this comes out, it'll have been about a week ago. But just I can't. I know I rave about these guys all the time, and I'll get off my Boundary soapbox here after this, maybe for a while, unless they like put new music out and I have to rave about it. Um, but it's just the live show is just so incredible. So the first opener was a band called Acres, who's from the UK, and they were fine. They sound like Memphis May Fire. That's what it sounds like to me. So kind of like, it's all right. It's kind of like almost like cookie cutter metalcore. Not really reinventing the wheel at all, and it was fine. Um, Boundaries came on after them, and then after Boundaries was Holding Absence, which I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to get into Holding Absence too. My wife likes Holding Absence, which I feel like kind of like that kind of speaks to the type of, it's almost like, I don't know. Watching them live too, it's like they're kind of just like a drop tuned Jonas Brothers. I mean, to a certain, I mean, it's kind of it. So it's not my thing, really, Holding Absence. Um, there's some of their songs that I like to listen to if it's like raining outside. I'm in like a mopey mood. Um, and then the Plot and You played, and the Plot and You was great. Again, like the Plot and You may not be like at the top of the list of my favorite artists, but for like what they do, kind of that like blend of metalcore and post-hardcore that they do, the lead vocalist, I can't remember his name, but lead vocalist voice is insane. Like the fact that he can do as many songs as he did and go all out is pretty wild. I watched an interview with him a while back where he's like, I don't know. He's like, I hear all these other vocalists say things like, oh, well, you got to go easy when you're performing every single night. He's like, I just go all out, and it's been good so far. So that was really cool. The energy from the crowd. I mean, the crowd really loved the Plot and You. But getting back to Boundaries, Boundaries was easily the heaviest band on the ticket. And they just like, oh, it's like you just feel it from the stage. They want a hardcore show. Like they had the venue just like turn the lights on in the crowd so it's super bright, but so that they could see the pit, they could see what the crowd was doing. Just super good vibes in the pit. It's just like I just got sucked in. Like a lot of times now that I'm a bit older, I kind of just like I resist the urge to get in the pit. I stand in the back, find like a good place to chill out. But it's just like you can't. Like a while back, I was talking about the Chariot, and when I saw them live, like everybody just kind of moved towards the stage, and it's like my feet picked up, and I just like moved without even wanting to, or meaning to. It's like kind of the same thing. I was just like felt myself being drawn in to the pit, and then it's just like you can't help it because it's so fun. And it's like there are shows out there where it's like you can tell the band's not super into it, which kind of sucks. Or there's shows where like the band doesn't really care what the crowd is doing. Like the band has been performing for so long that they're worried about like their set list, or they're worried about the lights or the stage or the performance, or anything like that. They don't really care what like the crowd is doing, but Boundaries cared. Boundaries cared that this was a hardcore show and that there was some hardcore stuff going on. And so it was so fun to see those guys live. I love them. Um, but anyways, I'm excited. Next week, I'll see Counterparts, and they're touring with Malevolence and Pain of Truth and Foreign Hands. And so a good mix there of like, hardcore and metalcore there. That'll be a good show. But last week, I kicked off this segment where I have been talking about my what I call perfect albums that to me are like perfect front to back. They've been perfect for, a while now, whether it's like a couple of years or like a lot of years. Albums that are just like my tried and true. I know if I'm bored and I can't find any new music to listen to, I can always go back to these and I'll never be bored listening to them. So last week I talked about an album from Brand New, The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me. This week we're talking about The Chariot, and their album Long Live. I have to go back and forth a little bit trying to figure out my favorite Chariot album, but this one like has, kind of consistently risen to the top for me. The Chariot for a long time, and maybe even still to this day, was my favorite band. I think they may still be like my all-time favorite band. And, I know there's like rumors out there with this upcoming Furnace Fest that like maybe the Chariot will get back together because they broke up in 2010, or they just like ended. It wasn't like, a bad breakup or anything. It just ended, and they all went on to do different things. So Josh, the vocalist, he went on to start the band 68, who is still around. Steven, the one of the guitarists I know, went on to play with Fever 333, and now he and Eric and Proda are now in the band House of Protection, which I'm telling you guys here. I know I've kind of like talked about House of Protection already, like last year when I did my top 10 albums of the year. I'm telling you right now, House of Protection is going to blow up. Like House of Protection is going to be so good. They're so creative. They're so new. Like what they're doing right now is different than any other band out there. And it's just this really cool like DIY feel to it too. It's like super modern, but it's just like it's kind of punk rock too, because like they're just kind of doing their own thing, and they have a lot of input, um and they bring in all these elements from the different bands that these guys have been a part of. And so to me, they're gonna blow up. And they just like Architects, like one of the biggest bands in metalcore history, just dropped a new track with House of Protection. So I'm telling you guys, they're gonna be huge. They're going on tour with Poppy right now, which that one's coming through Arizona. I may try to go see that one. But I'm telling you guys, you heard it here. Maybe not first, but you heard it here. House of Protection is going to be huge. So anyway, Steven from the Chariot went and did that. Some of the other band members kind of went and worked with other bands as well, or just kind of did like other things after that. But the Chariot was definitely, my favorite band. It may still be my favorite band of all time. I've got their skull logo like tattooed right on my kneecap, with the words "Long Live," which is like the title of this album. And then the date that I saw them, because I never got a chance to see them. I mean, I told you I lived in a place where shows never came through, and I loved the Chariot since the time I heard them, the first time I heard them, because I loved Norma Jean, still do, but Norma Jean, their first album, um, Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child. That came out, and Josh was the vocalist, but he only made one album with Norma Jean and then went on and made The Chariot. And so I loved Norma Jean, and then I just kind of naturally loved The Chariot. And they were, if you're not familiar, a lot of you guys probably are, but they were just known for their insane shows. Their live shows they were wild. They would try to do them in smaller venues, up close and personal, small stage, or even no stage at all, no matter how big they were, because they were pretty popular towards the end. Still, they would do smaller, even if they were headlining, they did smaller venues. Um, and I mean, just like the crowd was on the stage for the entire time, stage dives all night long. I mean, grabbing the mic and singing along. And so the reason I've got the tattoo is, yeah, because they're like my favorite band, but also the night that I saw them, I went and saw them in Seattle. It was one of the greatest nights of my life. I mean, like I had a pathway where I would like climb onto the stage from the side where there wasn't a lot of people, run, either just like stage dive or like grab the mic with Josh and like 12 other people like screaming the song, and say just so fun, and then just jump off into the crowd. Was one of the greatest nights of my life. And the album Long Live, I feel like, is just like it's peak Chariot. The album One Wing, I feel like their very last album is really close. It's kind of, it was almost a toss up between Long Live and One Wing. But I think Long Live, just because for whatever reason, I just, that one I just listened to more than any of their other albums. Um, in fact, their song on there, "The City," is one of like my top songs of all time. "The City" is just, it's perfect chaos, but then it ends with like, this like, like gang vocals, but it's like everybody singing together, and that just perfectly encapsulates for me the Chariot, because it's like, yeah, we're nuts and we're gonna do our craft, but we're gonna invite you to be part of it, and that's what the Chariot was all about. And so their album Long Live, to me, is just one of the best albums of all time. It's one of those where if somebody's gonna go listen to it, they don't like, heavy music or loud music. It's weird to call the Chariot heavy. You can't really call the Chariot heavy. It's loud though, and it's chaotic. It's like punk hardcore. Um, and so, they'll probably be blown away. But there's just so many cool songs. They had the coolest like guest vocals too, like Dan, from a band called Listener, that I don't think is around anymore, which is too bad, which was kind of like a mix of like kind of like spoken word, with music kind of a thing. He's on a song that's just super cool. What's crazy too is on their second album, The Fiance, they had Haley Williams from Paramore on a song like before Haley blew up. So that's really, I mean, they just like they had there was one song that they did on their song One Wing, and they had a gal that was singing on that song. A gal, like how old am I? There's a lady that was singing on that song, and she went on to like be on The Voice or something like that. So they just have such a cool way of like picking talent and like working with that talent, and they don't really care. Like they never fit inside of a box. It's like we don't care like what kind of music you sing. If like this sounds good together with what we're doing, we're gonna, we'll throw it in there. So like, they had trumpets, they had like some songs that had like harps in it, choirs. I mean, it's just they had all of their albums are awesome. You should go listen to every single one of the Chariots albums and then go listen to Long Live at least twice. But yeah, it's a perfect album for me. The very first record that I ever bought, like record as in like actual record, because I'm a slave to trends and now I buy records. It was the very first one I ever bought. And I didn't even have a record player, but I was like, I know I want this album. I love it so much. So yeah, the Chariot, Long Live, best one of the best albums of all time. That also is probably in my at least top five, if not top three, albums of all time is the Chariot. So we'll see. We'll see if I get to see him again. We'll see if they come back together. I feel like when they broke up, they were pretty adamant about not getting back together. But who knows? Like Jesse, who was on a few episodes ago, he's like, Furnace Fest kind of has a way of bringing bands, out of the shadows to, at least come play one more gig together. So we'll see. I think they're going to make some more announcements about artists playing, hopefully this week. So the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza is playing. Speaking of bands that they're bringing out of the woodworks, so stoked to see those guys, man. Drain's going to be playing there, which is going to be super fun. So anyways, yeah, excited for that. I posted something on Instagram the other day about the Warp Tour lineup as well, and I threw a poll out there just to see how people felt about it, which was kind of interesting because I don't know. I went through the Warp Tour lineup, and Warp Tour is back. And I think they're only doing three stops. I think Washington, D.C., Orlando, and California. They're doing a stop there. So super limited. And I don't know. Maybe it's just the older I get, but like I looked at the lineup and I was just like, it's fine. You know, I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of bands there where, like, if they came through my hometown, like, of course I'd go see them. And maybe it's because now, like, where I live, those bands will come through eventually. So you're like, I don't really need to go to Warp Tour. Like, I went to Warp Tour years ago. I'm pretty sure it's the only time they came through Montana. And it's just like, I mean, Furnace Fest, I feel like I kind of need to go to. It's like a historic, but Warp Tour is too. But it's like I'm kind of over festivals to be honest, at least outdoor festivals like Warp Tour, where it's just like you're just in a dusty field and you're hot and you're sweaty and you're like thirsty and you just feel gross at the end of the day. You're just caked in dirt. And I don't know, maybe I'm just over it. So I looking at the lineups for Warp Tour, I'm just like, yeah, it would be fun. And if like the opportunity came up, or it's like if they came through Phoenix, like yeah, I'd probably go to Warped. But there's just also, I don't know, it's a lot of work to go to festivals. When you're in your 30s, and you got a family, you got kids, and you get sore and you have like a bedtime and stuff, like it can't be. I mean, festivals take a lot of work, like, mentally and physically, and financially. So it's just like, I don't know that I would do it, man. I don't, if they came through, I'm just like, I mean, maybe, but I'm certainly not going to like go out of my way and go to California and go to it. There just wasn't, I don't know. And maybe it's just because I've seen almost everybody that's there or a lot of people that are there. Um, or just like a lot of the bands that are there, I'm just not super interested in. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there have been better lineups. That's just my personal preference, I guess. But it was interesting. I think I'm trying to look it up, see if I can still see the results here. I basically was like, it was three options. It was like, what do you think of the Warp Tour lineup? Is it good? Is it mid? I used a term that like, my kids use. Is it mid? Or who cares? Warp Tour is back. And so just looking now, like a little or so like 77% of people said mid. The rest of the percentage said who cares, Warped Tour is back. And actually nobody, on which we don't have a ton of followers yet. I don't know how many people saw this and how many people voted. I may be able to see that too. Um, but I mean, a few hundred people, I guess it says. So not everybody voted, but nobody was like super excited about it. So it's kind of interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how Warp Tour goes this year and see if they actually bring it back again, based on like the performance and whether people are excited. So it's kind of almost like it's like the NBA All Stars, right? Um, I don't know. Maybe that's not a good comparison. The NBA All Stars is super lame. Um, but anyways, one thing I wanted to chat about as far as like, the dad side of things and the mental health side of things today, is this idea of sobriety. I know that it's kind of like which I think is a great thing. There's a lot of like people that are choosing sobriety nowadays, which I think is a really great thing. I think for a long time, just like drinking in general was just like, it's just normal. If you have a problem with it, that's your issue. But like most people drink and it's not a big deal. But I think more and more people are just like choosing sobriety. And it's not because all of them, have an issue with alcohol or they're alcoholics. A lot of people, it's just for like health reasons, things like that. I recently, not to jinx anything by like announcing it to the world, but recently, decided to choose sobriety and not to drink alcohol anymore. And there are a number of reasons for it. Like I said, there's health reasons. Dude, I just like, you get to your 30s. I mean, I go to the gym on a pretty regular basis, but I kind of like plateaued at a certain point where I was just like, dude, I'm not losing any more weight. It's like I feel like I don't eat a lot, but it's like I'd always drink, right? Like I'd always have a couple glasses of wine or I'd always have a few beers or something like that. And I think that definitely like contributed to it. And then I start telling my wife, who's like a health guru, start telling her all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, I get like super bad heartburn from this, and this. And she's like, well, you should probably cut out gluten because all those things are like wheat stuff. So in addition to that, like I've cut out like gluten, try to go as gluten free as possible. And that's helped a bunch. But I mean, like obviously like beer has, a ton of gluten in it, unless you get like gluten free beer, which I don't know if that's good or not. So there's like definitely health reasons, and I've definitely felt better for sure. Like I'm not bloated. I feel like I was just always bloated, no matter what, whether it was wine, beer or like bourbon or something like that. Like I always felt bloated the next day, and I was just like, oh, like I just have to fart, but I can't. And it's just like my stomach seemed huge. And so that has definitely been better. Like acid reflux has been down, bloating has been down. Like I have more energy. I'm not sleeping as well, which is kind of weird. I feel like I always slept really well, so that's kind of a new thing. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you sleep better if you cut out alcohol." That hasn't been the case for me. Like I've actually have been sleeping less, which is fine. I feel like I can operate just fine, on like minimal amounts of sleep. So, but the other thing is, I think I had to come face to face with a certain level of dependence that I had on alcohol. Um, there, without going into too many details, there was a period of time a number of years ago where my wife and I were going through a pretty rough patch. Um, and, we made it out the other side and we're even stronger now than we ever have been. And our family's in this really great place. But, there's a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions that come up with that kind of stuff. And I would drink to basically not to like get blackout drunk, but I would drink to not have to deal with those emotions essentially, not like wipe them out, but just like I don't want to think about this. I don't want to be sad, right? Which, as my therapist always reminds me, alcohol is a depressant. Like you're gonna feel more depressed. You may feel better for a little bit, but then you're gonna crash and crash hard. And that was always the case for me. Like be like, I just need a drink, man. I don't want to think of whether it could be just be I don't want to think about the stress of work, or I don't want to think about like these negative emotions. I don't want to feel sad. I just need a drink, feel good for like 20 minutes, and then crash for like 2 days. That's how it always was. Like I would feel sad after I quit drinking that night, and then wake up the next day and still feel terrible. So I think what I realized though, as far as dependence on alcohol, was the very first time I thought about cutting it out completely and not drinking at all, like I felt scared. And that really surprised me because all of a sudden I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, why am I scared to not do this? Because in the past, like I've cut things out, right? Like my wife and I were vegan for a couple of years, and I was just like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Just cut out everything, every animal product. We're not anymore. But like the gluten thing, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll cut it all out. That's not hard. But when I was thinking about cutting out alcohol completely, I got scared and I was like, dude, why in the world am I scared about this? And I think it was because I was like, I'm scared that I don't know how to deal with emotions without this. I'm scared that I might have to feel things that I don't want to feel. I'm scared that I don't have this thing to fall back on if I have a bad day. Um, then you get scared of like, oh, what if I'm not a fun person if I'm not drinking? That too. Or like, what if I can't hang out with friends? Or what if people aren't going to want to be with me? Or what if like, we've got a big family gathering and everyone's like, why aren't you drinking? Or whatever it is. But it's like all those things I realize are just stupid. Like, I mean, like alcohol for me was a crutch. And that's when I was like, no, actually, I think I do have a dependence on it. Because like there are certain things that I don't know how to do without it. Like I got to a point where I didn't know how to be social without alcohol. I didn't know how to go to a show without alcohol. Like this last one, I just like texted Jan, like just hanging out here with my bottle of water, at this last show. And it's just weird because everybody around you is drinking. But then when you kind of separate yourself from it, and this is not to be elitist, by the way, it's not to be like, one of those snobs that is sober. But it's like when you step away from it and you're not drinking, like you kind of see everybody around you and it's like you watch it and you hear it and you smell it and you're just kind of like, oh man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of that. It's like, dude, like this is a cheesy analogy, but like I used to have my ears stretched. If you're watching YouTube, you can see like I still have holes. Like my earlobes kind of look like cat butts. um, but like I used to have my ears stretched, and I had like pretty big ones in there. Um, and I remember going to Walmart once, and I saw like three dudes that had their ears stretched, and they just all looked like it's just so judgmental, but they all just looked like such douchebags that I took my plugs out that day and never put them back in because I was just like, I don't want to be associated with that. And that was kind of like, I don't want to be elitist and be like, oh, I don't want to associate with people that drink because I don't care. Man, I don't even like talking about it with people sometimes because I don't want them to feel weird. I don't want them to feel awkward. Have a drink if you want, right? If you don't have issues with it, I mean, maybe you do and you shouldn't, but it's like, I'm not going to tell you not to drink. I don't care. This is just for me, like personally. But it's just like I was looking around. I'm like, it's so nice to do things level, like clear and have a clear mind when you're doing things and not just like feel fuzzy. Even if you feel really good, just like that brooding feeling that like it's gonna crash at some point, or I hope I can get home safe, or like I hope I don't say something I regret, or whatever it is. I hope I'm not sad tomorrow. So it is. I will say, like, as far as like, physically, I feel good not doing it. Mentally, there are certainly days where it's hard and I really want to drink, and certain situations where I really want to drink, and abstaining from that makes me mad sometimes. So I kind of have to just like take a step back and breathe and, maybe have people give me some space a little bit. But for the most part, it's been great. So I mean, that's just, and along with being a dad, right? The norm is like, you go to work, you come home, you crack open some brewskis, or whatever, you go have, throw some back with the boys after work or something like that. And that's fine. Like I said, that's fine. I'll go hang out with guys. I work from home, so, I'm not gonna take my kids out to the bar. That's the only people I see at work. Um, fine, whatever. If somebody wants to have a beer, have a beer. If they've got non-alcoholic beer, I'll probably drink it. I feel like all non-alcoholic beers taste the same and they're not that great, but like there is still kind of that like habit of like needing something in your hand, drinking something while you're like grilling, right? Like a lot of times I'll have a non-alcoholic beer while I'm grilling, or a liquid death or something like that. Just to feel like you've got a tall boy in your hand, and you're, going through that ritual that you're used to. But it's been a good thing. So I guess just like I say all of this, not to toot my own horn, but just like encourage dads that are out there. Um, First of all, to recognize that like your dependence on alcohol might not look the way that you think it's going to look. Because for me, again, I was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not getting wasted and like crashing my car or like falling down the stairs, which that, if I was being honest, that it had happened. I had never crashed my car, but there are definitely some nights in my past where it's like, dude, this is you went way too far. Um, but if you're out there and you're like, well, I don't have a problem with it, maybe take like a mental checklist and be like, okay, you feel like you don't have a problem with it, but are you able to do things without it? Like, are you able to do family events without it? Are you able to go to shows without it? Are you able to watch football without it? Are you able to grill without it? Are you able to converse with people and have fun with people and joke around? Like, are you able to laugh without it? If not, and then I don't know, maybe it's time to just give it a break. Try it. Try it for a month. See how you feel physically, see how you feel mentally. It's not a guarantee that your depression and your anxiety go away. I mean, that hasn't been my case, but I can tell you that at the very least, I'm not crashing like I used to, right? It's like I have enough problems with depression and anxiety just sober. I don't need to add the alcohol to make it even worse. So I don't know, just give it a shot. I encourage you to give it a shot. Within like the hardcore scene, the reason I didn't quit drinking for a long time too is just kind of like out of abstinence because I was always a little annoyed by straight edge people. I think straight edge, most straight edge people are great. And a lot of the bands I love are straight edge bands. And, if you're listening to this and you're not familiar, straight edge just means it's kind of like a subculture of the hardcore and punk movement, but it's like, people who are drug free, alcohol free, a lot of them, will be monogamous and things like that. The problem I had was that like, a lot of hardcore people were douchebags. Again, it's like people that had their ears stretched. It's like these guys were douchebags. It's like, um, they just were like a lot of them were like really disrespectful towards women. I would see at shows, and they were elitist about it. So it's like, if you were straight edge and you broke edge and like drank, they like ostracized you, or they would get super weird. They'd be like, well, like I can't be around people that are smoking pot because I'll get a contact high and I won't be edge anymore or whatever. It's like they just made it a lifestyle and just really like worship the idea of being straight edge. And I'm like, dude, you just got to chill out. Like, don't throw it in people's faces. Don't be pushy about it. At least, I think it's annoying. So I was always just like, whatever. I'm gonna have a beer because these straight edge guys are like annoying me. Like one time I got hit, like I was in the middle of this pit and it was like chaotic and it was a dark venue, and I got like hit in the shoulder with brass knuckles. Like somebody brought brass knuckles to this show, and I couldn't see who it was, but I like saw the hand like pull away in the middle of this crowd, and I saw the brass knuckles, but then like on the hand was an X, right? And that's what like straight edge will do. That's like the sign is they'll put an X, right? They don't have a wristband at shows for alcohol. They have an X because, that's what underage people that shouldn't be drinking get when they go to shows. That's what like straight edge people to do. Or like the three X's is kind of like, so, I mean, the thing is, I don't want to like downplay straight edge either. Like I've got a lot of respect for, guys that do that. Because essentially at this point, like I'm, straight edge without being straight edge. Like I'm not going to claim it. Just because I don't want to be a poser or anything like that. It's just like, whatever. I'm just doing what I feel like I need to be doing right now. I don't need to put a label on it. I don't need to like try to, get absorbed into a certain club or something. But yeah, I don't know, man. Just give it a shot. Like if you're thinking about it, just do it. If you've been doing it, let me encourage you. Keep it up. It really is just like one day at a time. Not trying to think too long term, but just be like, I just got to get through today. I just got to get through this hour. I just got to get through this moment right here. Some days I'm just like, I got to overcome this moment. I know it'd be so easy to give in and take a drink. But I just got to overcome this one moment and then I'll be good. For the next moment. And it's not always going to feel this hard. And so, just want to encourage you guys, if that's where you're at. If it's not, cool, awesome, no worries. If I see you at a show, I'll, raise my water or my NA beer to you, or whatever. Yeah, just, something for me, it has been a help with my mental health, at least to not have to deal with those breakdowns and to like strengthen, I think, my mental and emotional health by dealing with emotions instead of trying to just cover them up. That's always a good practice too, for sure. So yeah, I know last podcast episode I mentioned, something about an email address. We do have an email address. I did confirm that. So, and it is just dadswhomosh@gmail.com. Dadswhomosh@gmail.com. So you can reach out to us there. If you got questions or concerns, or you need to talk to somebody, you can reach out to us there. You can find us on Instagram at Dads Who Mosh. You can find me on my Instagram at Nate Who Moshes. Reach out to me there. Love to meet you guys. Appreciate you guys supporting the podcast. Appreciate you guys following us. give things a like, share it with your friends. We're trying to spread the word, trying to, connect with other people in this scene, but also, raise awareness for men's mental health, and be a source of support for guys that are out there, doing their best. So appreciate you guys. And I'll talk to you next time.